But yeah, cool. You up for doing the intro?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Cool.
You ready?
Yep. Oh, sleepy pee-pee. Very sleepy. Right, shut that there. Okay, so I count you in. Are you good to go whenever you're ready?
You ready?
Yeah, whenever you are. High energy.
Okay.
That really hurt.
Okay, you ready?
Oh my god, that hurt. Stupid.
Hello and welcome back. This video is going to be a little bit different. I usually like to tease Robbie, and today we were talking about NVMe's and Synology, and he really didn't like that subject. And I was thinking I'm going to poke a little bit in there. So what's going on, Robbie? What don't you like about Synology and NVMe's?
Okay, so normally, as Eddie says there at the intro, we don't really do reaction videos. We generally, like to talk about these things and try to come from as positive an angle as possible. If we do debate in these videos, and I met a few of you last week at a Synology event, and we sort of debated this, and I think a lot of people like these little debate videos like this, and that's really, really good. But at the same time, we try to stay away from negativity because, one, this is ever fluctuating and ever changing industry, and two, because in most cases, negativity just breeds negativity, So we try our best not to be negative unless we generally feel something is warranted or there is an omission in some way. That said, the last 2 weeks or so, I've been getting annoyed. And again, not really my thing, not really something I complain about, but I'm getting annoyed about this. I like the DS923 Plus. I really, really do. We did comparison videos. We did a lot of videos where we were talking about comparing it with its predecessor. And indeed, myself and Eddie, the web guy there, we debated several times about the hardware architecture of what a potential Intel version could have been versus the AMD one we have. And we never agreed on it, and that's fine. We've got our own viewpoint. However, for all of the fact that I like this device, the way Synology have handled the subject of M.2 NVMe storage pools beggars belief. It genuinely irritates me. And although we have to, of course, take on a pinch of salt that, one, this is a very early developing feature from Synology right now, and not, this is something that's only really existed in the Synology platform officially for less than 3 weeks, and secondly, this video might be out of date in 24 hours or 24 years. Things do change, and therefore something that annoys me now may not exist in the future. The way Synology have approached this feature is very, very unlike them, and I think it's been very slapdash, and I'm just not satisfied with the way this feature has been approached. I mean, before I go any further, Eddie, because I'm sure I'm preaching to the people watching this, but also you, what is your understanding of M.2 NVMe support on this device?
As much as I know is you can put quite a few SSDs in there, quite different kinds of brands and models, and they do work as caching. But once you try to set up a storage pool for storage, there's only Synology NVMe's allowed in such a setup.
Okay, well, I'll be honest, I'm going to blow your mind, because there are 3 things about this support that I find disappointing. Now, it's worth highlighting again, this is them rolling out this feature, but I will also add that other brands have provided this feature, in some cases, for 2 to 3 years, and this feature has been requested for a long time by Synology users, the ability to use M.2 NVMe Bays on their systems for more than just caching. These drives here to allow you to use them for both caching and raw storage. These are not slow SSDs, but they're also not cheap SSDs either. M.2 NVMe's can provide, in the case of PCIe Gen 3, upwards of 3,000 or more megabytes per second, which dwarfs the 180 to 250, 260 you can get from a conventional hard drive. Now, so people have been dabbling with this feature for a while, and officially, using SSH to tap in there and enable them, a few GitHub things knocking around. But now Synology has enabled it, the way they've gone about it, I'm going to stop repeating myself, I'm just really angry, it has been tremendously poor. Now, the first thing that's super annoying about this is the fact that, as you say, the M.2 NVMe's are only Synology brand. At the moment, I'm saying that, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, only their own SSDs support this feature. Now, that wouldn't bother me so much if the M.2 NVMe's, these are the only ones you can really get. And although the sequential read speed is 3000, the sequential write is reported at between 800 and 1000 megabytes per second, which makes those SSDs, pretty good for caching, not great for general storage pools, particularly editors that want to use it as a scratch disk and not just an archive to pull from. The fact that I can only use their drives, if you're going to limit that feature to only their drives, roll this feature out when there are more drives available, a better range of drives available, at least with their hard drives. When they did, when there were question marks flying around about compatibility of hard drives on their platform, at least their hard drives were high performance, high workload, Synology firmware, just real good, enterprise grade hard drives. Whether you love them or like them, you can't argue that they're not good drives, because they are good drives. But these SSDs, as far as storage pools go, are lackluster, and unless they brought out their own drives that had higher performance measures for PCIe Gen 3, I do think it's super annoying that it's only their drives. I mean, which brings us on to my second irritation, if you'd like to get a word in edgeways, Eddie, because otherwise I'm just going to shout at you. Anything?
Oh, you always need to remember about reliability and how rigid the actual hard drive, this SSD you get from Synology. So they are quite top quality SSDs in comparison. Not the fastest
In
one,
durability, certainly.
But you can't have both the speed and durability, I guess, in some cases. So therefore, you need to find a compromise.
Oh, do you know what? That's a very balanced point of view, and I like that. But my second point is to do with the PCIe architecture of the drives inside here. Now, we've dug into this. Fair play, more on Eddie's side than mine, going in with putting. We've shared it a few times online. Eddie, would you like to maybe elaborate on the PCIe slots of the DS923 Plus?
Yeah, that was quite a disappointment when I was going through the hardware side of things and checked all lanes dedicated to USBs and NVMe's and hard drive bays. And then I realized that they're supposed to be faster PCI bandwidth than it actually is. It's actually capped to half speed of what it was supposed to be. So it was pretty annoying to see that.
I think it's Gen 3 times 1 that it's been capped to. Again, that flew past me. I was talking about it with someone on Reddit, and someone on Reddit actually highlighted that there was that cap there. Now, whether that is something that will be removed, something that's been put on there temporarily, who knows? But it's the idea that I could get this retail and I've got a cap on those drives. Now, I've done 10G speed testing externally, and I've done some internal performance measures. I know a number of you will probably immediately say, what's the point doing external 10G testing if it already bottlenecks to 1000 megs? Well, the minute you go for more dense file types, that's when SSDs really show off their abilities in terms of capacity, larger capacities, more NAND being read from. And if you look at greater than gigabyte files, 4 gig, 16 gig, stuff like that, then 10GBE stops being the bottleneck that you think it is when bench testing M.2 NVMe's, because the system and the SSD itself has to show its ability. That's a little bit where IOPS comes in as well, not too much though. But the idea that they've limited those slots in some way, whether it is because of the overarching architecture of this device and therefore they've had to distribute lanes towards different things, but that CPU I think has, again, forgive me for not having the details to hand, but the embedded RISE on there is either 8 or 12 lanes. And given that this has got the 3x2 10GBE upgrade on the base, and you're only going to use like one lane for each of those two bays for the 4 bays divided by 2, I still think there's enough architecture in there. And as you rightly pointed out when you dug in with PuTTY and SSH, 3x4 is there on that. So it's really strange to me, that limitation. And talking of limitation, and again, I'm sure this is something that will change, my third big gripe, it's only this NAS. You can only use M.2 NVMe's as storage pools on this device. Now, notwithstanding, it is not the only PCIe Gen 3 NAS in the market. I can't do that without looking. Not only is it not the only Synology NAS with PCIe Gen 3 in the market, but why limit users that have got PCIe Gen 2 slots as well? If you own a DS920 Plus and you've got those M2 slots, yes, they're Gen 2, probably limited to 2x2 or 2x4, but that's still some decent bandwidth that you could be taking advantage of with enhanced performance there, on your system with that Intel processor. there are lots of users out there running the 1621, 1821. They've got M.2 NVMe slots there on Gen 3 architecture that they can't use as storage pools. Now, maybe this is something Synology that down the line they will enable as a supported feature. But why only release it for this on that architecture now? It just seems a really odd way they've gone about producing this feature. Sorry for my phone going off there. But for you, Eddie, how else could they have approached this? Before I go right out my trolley.
I think they deep inside, in the back of their mind, they have realized that they have chosen the wrong path, really, and that without doing some sort of marketing tricks, this new 923 wouldn't sell as well. Because now you have a choice. Either you have 920 with multimedia or 923 which doesn't have multimedia, or you can have these faster storage pools. So they push people to think like, which sort of stuff is more important for me, for higher speeds or better compatibility with media. And there are quite a few people who will think like, well, at least I can do video editing on this 4-bay, even though I can't share it with my clients when those projects are finished because of no media support. But at least I can edit, so they have to pick or another side.
I mean, there is media support. I don't sign to that philosophy. Again, I've said at the beginning, I actually quite like this NAS, and I think it is good. But when it comes to the way they've approached it, I think there might be a ring of truth about what you're saying about this M.2 NVMe support being used as a killer app type feature to promote this device. I hope that isn't true. I really hope that isn't true, because as cynical as that sounds, that would really bum me out if that's true. But it's very much for me the idea that this is a feature people have genuinely demanded since about 2018 when the DS918 arrived on the scene, and other brands have not only integrated this feature very early doors, but they don't have those stricter compatibility limits on supported SSDs when they did launch that feature, and even systems that were PCIe Gen 2 allowed this feature to be used, caching or standalone storage pools there. And I think unless Synology turn this around on DSM 7.2, or this is a feature that they're going to eventually say that they were benchmarking, because remember, they didn't talk that loud about this feature. We'll get onto that in a bit. But unless Synology rotate this a little bit, open it up out into other devices, or somehow at least put a statement out why it's being done in this way, I can't help but feel that this approach has been done in a arguably slightly more calculated manner than it should have been. I mean, as I said, I'd come to it. The idea that this feature has not been heavily advertised by Synology. I think would you say it's fair to say that when Synology introduces a feature or a new killer kind of great part of DSM, hardware or software, they generally capitalise on that occasion and market it. Would you agree?
Yeah, but sometimes you might feel guilty for things you didn't do in the past. There was nothing holding them back to enable storage pools, and now when it's finally out, it's so overdue in the fact that it's actually embarrassing to bring it out and say like, oh, finally after 3 years we introduced this.
Fair. I mean, there is merit to that, but still, just the idea that when the 923 came out, it was just not spoken of, just seemed really odd to me, because it is a classic feature that people have been asking for. Yet when it did arrive at it, now genuinely, I think I can talk about this a little bit. How did I find out about this feature? I found out about this feature along with another prominent Synology reviewer in the YouTube comments. I didn't find out about this feature while going through my review. When I was doing my review for this device, I didn't even think to check that those were storage pools. That's how of an under-the-radar reveal this feature was. But again, I hate doing negative videos like this because I don't think it's purely constructive, and I do genuinely believe that Synology are going to change this in the same way when DSM 7 came out, and people on the XS in the 21 and 22 generation, there were devices where hard drive compatibility and the way it was portrayed to the end user definitely ruffled some feathers. And in DSM 7.1, they did address this and rebalance it. And I believe Synology are going to readdress this and go about this a different way. I wish they, premiered this feature in a much, much better way than they have. Do you think the same, Eddie, or how do you feel?
I think it's early stages, and I think they are not really confident in all this new feature because, as you said, it's limited. It's capped to 1,000 megabytes a second, which is they think is the speed of 10 gigabit port, what you're going to introduce at the back of your NAS. So they think like, why bother adding more lanes to this NVMe storage if it's going to be bottlenecked anyway? So it's better if there's more performance available to other things, other hardware in this setup. Another thing was, even though we have this 1 gig a second, they feel embarrassed a little bit about their own SSDs. So when you enable this 1 gigabit lane, those SSDs only can perform 700-800 megabytes a second.
Sequential write, yeah.
And also on top of everything is the availability about other drives. So they knew probably that we will be having this video and other people will be discussing these limitations in comments in other Discord. So they didn't want this to be a big subject to talk about.
I love that this has become some kind of conspiracy video, your side. I was just hacked off about something. But, I mean, I do think it'll be a feature that's opened out. And I think what we'll see moving forward from this, and again, this is blind prediction, I think, one, we will see NVMe SSD flash station from them. I definitely think we're going to see that. Two, I think we will see DSM booting from the NVMe's. When we were looking at the Synology event last week at Wembley, we were seeing that HD 6500, and on that system, the whole of DSM runs from the SSDs. There's a couple, I think there's either 2 or 4 SATA-based SSD bays that DSM is designed to boot from on that larger scale system, because it would be unthinkable to run it from the hard drive array in that kind of hyperscale. So I think we are going to see DSM booting from the M.2 NVMe's. It will be advertised as a feature, and that sounds like something that would be a DSM 7.2 or 2.1 update there. But it's just, as it stands, I think there's just so many omissions in this feature. I almost wish it wasn't there. It feels like it needs a bit more time in the oven, and I feel like having this feature presented as it is doing more harm than not having it at all. They should have rolled it out properly or not at all. But what do you guys think? As I say, this video was not planned. I didn't even sorted my hair out. So let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. Are we being overly negative about this? Is this something of a larger strategy? Would you rather see Synology crawl, walk, then run, than jump immediately to run? And ultimately, we'd really like to know your feedback on this, because, in our little bubble here, who knows, we might be completely in the wrong. So do let us know. But Eddie, is there anything else you want to say to the people at home?
I just like the innovation anyway. Whatever the speeds, whatever the pros or cons are, I like the innovative side of the Synology, which I support. Even those speeds are not the best, but they are moving forwards and improving their products, which is good.
And of course, if you guys need any help choosing your data storage solution, as always, there's the free advice section over at NASCompares, the free community forum over on Ask NASCompares, manned by me, Eddie, more Eddie than me, I'll be straight with you, and users on that community that can help you with your questions. And of course, if you need any assistance, there's guides linked in the description to both the 923 and other tests that we've performed on the M.2 NVMe's inside this system. And of course, if you are thinking of buying from Amazon, very important, and two, if our videos have helped you, and if you can say that those two things are true, use the links in the description to take you to Amazon, because anything you buy there, genuinely anything, will result in a small kickback coming back to NASCompares, and that really helps me and Eddie continue to do what we do. But only use those links if those two facts are true for you. But other than that, click like if you've enjoyed the video, subscribe as we delve into this subject more and more, and other than that, have yourself a bloody great Christmas, and we'll see you in 2023.